moving through this, and I sure hope that we'll be out of the forest here by next summer, the same time or earlier. But I think we're getting ready to go into a challenging period of time as the flu season approaches us, as well as pertussis and measles and other crazy things hitting the fan, compounded by the fact that many of us have kids or grandkids that are going back to school and maybe bringing home some goodies for us, not just COVID, but all the other things I mentioned and common colds, and trying to make sense out of what's dropping into our households. It's going to be somewhat of a zoo, to say the least. So I'm going to try to run through some of our latest stats nationwide and locally here in Colorado. And for those of you that are out of state and you want to look at some of the stats, the Johns Hopkins site is always the place to go to find out what's going on in your local state or city. And I'll have some screenshots of that for you. So currently the trends I'm observing are we are seeing some improved mask use in Colorado and in many other states. And I think a lot of that is because of the mandated rules that have come up. And I wish it was mandated nationwide, but unfortunately that still hasn't happened. But many of the states are doing the right thing and mandating it in public places, which is great. And that's helping us in those states that are following those guides. I think there's a lot of frustrations that continue, unfortunately, amongst our teens in particular. I think as adults, we're also frustrated because we want to be hanging out with our friends and family and traveling to different parts of the world, but we're kind of on a lockdown, at least in our country, and we can't travel to Europe and many other places that we'd like to go to. We're seeing continued images of our teens, and I've got two teens, that are out partying on the beach or at house parties. Knock on wood, as far as I know, my kids have not been part of that scene. Who knows? And then we've got this crazy Sturgis bike rally going on, and other, big events that, guys my age are riding their Harleys out to and having a great time. But I'm sure most of them aren't wearing a mask, and we're likely going to see a spike that's going to emerge from there and, show up in the various states that they came in from. So that's going to be an interesting observation by the epidemiologist to study. I think that vaccine development is looking promising. I was impressed by Putin being a wild man and putting it out there with, 100 people being tested. I think that's definitely a risky, crazy thing to do. But then again, if he gambles and it works in the right direction in terms of protecting the doctors and providers up front, it could be a pretty good play for him. And then perhaps if it does work well there, we can consider that vaccine here in the U.S. Earlier rather than later. That is, if we trust a Russian vaccine. Testing remains inadequate in many of the states. Luckily here in Colorado, it's been looking good. And I think most of the Midwest, it's been good. It's Florida where it's kind of a nightmare. And I think obviously California, LA, it's a nightmare just because of the larger populations and lack of resources. We still need to improve our game there in a big way. National leadership could be much better. I consider it to be weak. It's got a lot of misinformation, and that's contributing to more lost lives, in my opinion, particularly through the lack of leadership in terms of wearing a mask and personal protective gear when we're out. We need a unified message to the whole nation on this.
Hey, Dr. Fred?
Yeah.
Can we ask a question throughout this occasionally, or do you want to wait till the end?
Yeah, an occasional periodic question's great, and then at the end I've got it open for big Q&As. But yeah, if you got a quick one.
Just a quick one. The thing I hear more than anything is it takes 5 days, a week, sometimes 10 days to get the test results back, depending on a lot of factors. Are you hearing anything about what we as a country or locally anyway are doing to speed that process up?
Well, here in Colorado, most of the turnaround time is, 48 hours, maybe 72 at the most, which is acceptable. But if it's anywhere beyond that, don't even waste your time doing it. And hopefully they can tell you up front, hey, our turnaround time is looking at a week. We're sorry. Then I wouldn't even bother getting in line for it.
Yeah.
The only thing we can do to improve it is, more testing facilities and more test kits, right? So I think when you're in one of those situations in a state where the lines are really long, you might look at a private lab, even LabCorp or Quest, rather than a free public lab if you can afford it, and get it done there rather than being in a long line of 100 cars where they may run out before you even get there, and then their backlog's so extreme that it doesn't get processed. So,
Yeah.
um,
I don't have personal
yeah,
experience. I just hear that from people. That's kind of the
yeah,
biggest
yeah,
bitch these days.
yeah, and like Fauci and others have been saying, it's a complete waste of time and money and testing to do a kit unless you can get the turnaround in 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, good question though.
All right.
Yeah. I think, our opportunities are, encouraging our family and friends to stay the course, stay strong in terms of maintaining protection when we're out in public, preventing the spread, educating them, of course, calling out and correcting social media misinformation that's still occurring on a daily basis. I mean, I can scroll through maybe 10 posts on my Facebook and I'll see at least 2 of those 10 are misinformation, COVID statements that have been shared, likely by a Russian bot that came into somebody's box and they didn't vet it, or maybe they just voiced a false opinion based upon political alignment or some other opinion that they may have. So I think we have to be bold and call them out, but be respectful in calling them out and say like, oh, hey, John, I appreciate your opinion, but here's a link and the scientific evidence that shows that masks can actually reduce the risk of you getting COVID by 60%. Of course, if you're wearing an adequate mask, it's not going to be that good. So showing them the science whenever possible. Keeping ourselves healthy mentally and physically, considering the flu shot, or I should say recommending the flu shot for everybody this year in particular, and updating other immunizations that you might be behind on, particularly if you're in the 65 plus range and you haven't had the Pneumovax shots. Definitely getting those on board before this flu season hits would be smart. And then if you're not sure about pertussis, definitely get that updated. If you're not sure about measles, that's a good one to get updated. Why? Because we've got so many children that have not had those vaccines, and it's unfortunately part of the anti-vaxxer movement. And as a result, we're seeing spikes in those every year in the fall. And then, of course, we must seek new leadership in the fall. Some of you may disagree with me, and that's fine. Here was my last Zoom meeting where we were at on July 7th, a month ago roughly, and we had 11 million cases worldwide. We had 500,000 global deaths worldwide, and it's kind of scary to see how things have increased just in 4 weeks. Now we've almost doubled the number of confirmed cases to 20 million. And our deaths, luckily, have not doubled yet, but sometimes that can, be a little bit of a lag time from testing positive to people getting sick and dying in the hospital. But we're still at 750,000 people that have died from this, and I'm sure we're going to be looking at probably 3 million plus that are going to die by the time this is burning itself out within the world. I think nationwide by December, we're probably going to be looking at close to 300 to 400,000 deaths in the U.S. So right now we're at, get the next slide, 164,000 deaths worldwide. So we're definitely not out of the woods. I'd say we're 1/3 of the way through this if we're lucky. And if we keep our game on and we don't play politics and we get unified and we follow the science behind this and we're self-disciplined, I think we can make it through sooner rather than later. So the confirmed new cases, luckily, as you can see, is starting to drop off here as of August. The green line is us in the United States. As you can see, India is really starting to spike out and exceeding us at this point. So that's the country to really watch and hope that they're able to turn things around a little bit more. But they're not. We're not doing much better. I mean, we're declining more currently, but we could easily intersect and exceed their case reported positives in the next week or so. And then South America continues to see pretty scary numbers as well. particularly looking at, I think it was Colombia is on the rise, and some of the northern aspects of South America are showing a worrisome trend. We look at the Johns Hopkins reference of Colorado new cases. We can see that the new cases has been dropping, which is great. We're only doing one test per 1,000 roughly here in Colorado, so we've had a trend downwards in terms of testing recently. But we're still above the threshold in terms of the number of positive people. So we're still at about 1 in 20 people that are tested or positive, maybe a little higher than that. We want it to be below 5%. And if you look at some guidelines, they say that we should be on lockdown when we're above 5% positive test rate. And we're not on lockdown, we're just on social distancing. So if that rate of positivity suddenly increased to 10%, I would think that polis might block us down again. So it's important for us to keep up with our protection so that we don't creep up to that 10% and have to close restaurants and go back to that earlier stage of lack of freedom there. And this is just showing you another graph of where we had our spike in cases around April 25th, and then we had another spike that occurred late July that you can see on the graph, but now we're trending down in August, which is a great sign. So I think in general, Colorado and the nation are trending in a good direction, so that's good news. Now the hospitalization rate is still going up, unfortunately, and hopefully that will start to flatten and go down. This little box, unfortunately, blocks part of the curve, but the upper curve is older folks, 65 and older, and that accounts for the majority of it. And then the lower ones are the younger folk. You can still see how there's still quite a few people that are in that 18 to 49 range that are being hospitalized. So it's definitely not just the elderly that are being hospitalized for this. So you have to keep our kids informed about that they're not immune of getting deathly ill from it. The coronavirus death rates are on the decline, and I think that is, a kudos to healthcare practitioners and researchers that are finding newer therapies, whether it's using a little bit more inhaled steroids or maybe using remdesivir or different ventilatory strategies, et cetera, that are making a difference there. So I think that is another good sign for us. And some of it could be the deployment of convalescent plasma and other strategies too that are improving our corona death rates. So again, the promising trends are we have daily confirmed cases are dropping in Colorado and nationwide. The death rates are declining, so inpatient treatment strategies, again, are improving despite rising hospitalization rates. So I think we have an opportunity, particularly between now and the flu season, to really drop this down more so that if we do have a rise in these other co-infections, hopefully it won't be as scary as a picture as it potentially could be. If we've got both raging high, that being influenza combined with COVID, it's going to be quite the nightmare. All right, the mask research study at Duke. I just got some custom masks for our office, so if any of you guys are in the office in the near future, I've got 20 right now. I'm going to order 100 more, and I'll give you one of these fine masks to protect yourself. Duke did this cool study. I'm sure most of you have seen it or heard about it, and pretty simple. They just used a laser and had some people talk through it, cough through it, see what worked pretty well. And they used all the different mask types, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but bottom line is this number 11, which is a neck gaiter, is probably going to cause more harm than good. It ends up kind of breaking up the particles into small particles when you cough or talk, and makes it even more contagious, potentially. So you can use your neck gaiter for skiing, or you can use it for fly fishing to protect your neck from sunburn, but don't use it for COVID protection. Is pretty much worthless. The N95, which is number 14 here. There's multiple versions of that, and I'll show you one that I've got. It's another version, is our best protection, and I advise that if you happen to need to make a important plane flight, because that's going to give you the ultimate filtration. You want to use the kinds that do not have a valve on it. And that's what a lot of these Facebookers are saying is, oh, the N95 is no good. And of course, the one they're referring to is one that has a valve that if you cough, sure, it's going to spew virus out. So you want to get the one that has a valve so that it will protect others and not just you if it does not have a valve. So bottom line on all these is the good old surgical mask actually is not too bad. And the other ones that are really good, the pleated ones are fairly good. But these that have a combination of cotton with polypropylene or polypropylene alone tend to have a fairly high filtration rate. And if you get one of those comfortable polypro ones, I think you're more likely to wear it and you'll have great protection. I use some that are kind of a combined cotton polypro that also have a pocket in them to where I can slide like one of my old or a new piece of the old mask in there as a filter, or you could put a coffee filter in there just to give you one extra little layer of protection there. And here's the graph showing how the N95 had a droplet count that was mostly 0, right? So that was perfect on the far left. Surgical mask was just slightly above that. Pretty impressive. I didn't think a surgical, blue mask would be that good. And then our good old polypro cotton, not far behind a surgical mask, but more comfortable in my opinion. And then polypro by itself, pretty good with just, like a point, almost a 0.1 droplet emission through there. Plain old cotton, not quite as good. The valved N95, not as good as just a basic poly cotton mask. And then you can see how bandanas are not very good. And then the fleece is referring to the neck gaiter, which is the worst thing on the planet. So again, don't use that. So again, take home message, N95 without a valve is your best bet for traveling if you need to. The surgical mask or the polypro cotton is your next best option for daily use and for public school. I think the washable polypro cotton is my choice. And I have several of those, and I can just throw them in the washer with the clothes, and then have 6 or 7 of them, so I can just kind of rotate them out when needed. And then any type of face cover is fine except for a neck gaiter. So wear something to protect others and yourself. Now, back to school strategy. I know many of you don't have kids in school, but if you've got some relatives with kids in school or grandkids, definitely feel free to share this with them, and they can go to just this slide on the presentation. You can kind of tell them what minute mark it is or whatever from the YouTube. But I think it's an ongoing situation, ongoing experiment. God knows how it's going to go. I honestly think it's probably going to implode and not be very successful, but it's worth trying. There's a million guidelines out there. None of them are perfect. Everybody's going to argue about some flaw in it here and there. So hopefully we'll come to some common ground as we work through this. I think the key is, the small class sizes, keeping people 6 feet apart, having the kids wear a mask, of course, eating outside, and then each classroom should have some form of, I put HIPAA, that's funny, HEPA filtration to help with filtering the room on a regular basis, just like they're doing on airplanes and other public workplaces to filter out the virus. I would say buying 7 to 10 masks for each child is a good idea. That way you can wash them and just have them wear a mask for a single day. For most of us, we can probably get 2 days out of a mask, but if you're in a school, you've got a lot more exposure, you've got possibility of dropping it on the floor, etc. And for that reason, also have them throw a spare one in the backpack so that when it does hit the floor or some contaminated area in the bathroom, they can pull that one out of their backpack as well. I think the bus is risky, but okay if they're able to distance and they can wear masks and open the windows. But in the winter, I would say if you can, drive your kid to school just to limit that exposure. Of course, for some people that may not be possible, and you just do your best, whatever you can do. You give the kids a bottle of hand sanitizer clipped on with a little carabiner or something. You give them a pack of wipes, and you make sure that thing is refilled and in good supply. You remind them to wash their hands. You remind them not to touch their eyes, and pick their nose, whatever other crazy things may increase the risk for infection. When they come home, first thing you do, which they should be doing already, right, is washing their hands. But now I would say have them change a shirt, at least their top, shirt. I don't know if they need to change their trousers or dress or anything, but at least their top covering would be good. And then have them put something clean on and throw that directly into the washer. I have a ultraviolet sterilizing light on my kitchen counter, and my plan is to actually throw my kid's backpack on the counter, turn that light on for 10 minutes, and just have it zap it really good. And I'll probably pull his laptop and cell phone out and UV sterilize it that way. So if you do that, that's great. Otherwise, you could wipe it down, or you could mist it with some 70% or better alcohol, which won't damage the fabric. This is what I have in my office. It's called a Germ Guardian air filter, and I think I might even, if the school that my son goes to doesn't have these, I'm actually going to buy him a few. They're only about $100 a pop. This other one that you see on Facebook all the time called the Molecules, like $400, and the filters are $100. This one's like, as mentioned, $100 with a $15 filter, and it's got great reviews and does the level of filtration to kill viruses and kills it with the ultraviolet C light too. So you can grab these on Amazon. I think they're back in stock now. They were kind of hard to find for a while, and I think it's great for the home as well, particularly if you're having friends and family over for small gatherings. Best immune support for kids is getting them to sleep. I think this day and age is hard, right? They all want to be on their stupid laptops or texting their friends, FaceTiming, whatever. And that leads to them staying up till 1 or 2 in the morning. And, my kids are definitely not perfect in regards to that. So I have to either take their computers away at 10 o'clock or check up on them and make sure they tuck it under their bed or something. So make sure they're getting 8 hours of sleep. That will improve their immune function immensely and keep them free of being more susceptible. Check in with them frequently. Make sure they're hanging in there in terms of their stress around the pandemic, the usual social stresses at school, stresses around keeping up with homework and everything else that's going on. If they're open to doing meditation and yoga with you, or maybe even doing yoga through Gaia TV or some of these other programs that they can just do it on their own down in the basement or wherever, that would be great. Some outdoor yoga in the park if that's available through an instructor. Music, sound therapy are amazing. I'm a big advocate of that. Healthy diet, of course, for all of us. Mediterranean is my favorite. And increasing the veggies and antioxidants just to keep your inflammation low, so that if you do have the virus, the reaction which creates that inflammation in your lungs will be minimized. For kids, at least 2,000 units of vitamin D, which you can buy over the counter, is perfect. For older kids, that weigh over 150 pounds, I would definitely go up to 5,000 international units. If your kids are feeling a little off, low-grade temp, get them tested and isolate them the best that you can. I know it's not the easiest, but, put a mask on them while they're walking around the house at least, and keep them in the room as much as possible and wait for those results to come back, hopefully in less than 48 hours. For us adults, keeping up our game, we want to maintain regular exercise, of course, just like the kids, healthy weights, that good old anti-inflammatory Mediterranean diet. Again, vitamin D, vitamin C, immunotonics, which is a zymogen supplement, is one of my favorites. We've got it here. You can order it online. There's some other good ones that are made by Paul Stamets called My Community. It's a great mushroom-based immune support that has a lot of beta-glucan type support, reishi and whatnot in it, cordyceps. And I think we've got reasonable enough evidence to show that it can help with immune support to do at least a daily maintenance dose on that, particularly during the flu season. Again, we also need to find time to meditate and listen to relaxing music, etc. We have to walk or talk with our family and our kids and our friends. Keep ourselves in good physical, mental states. I think socialization is good for us. We know that helps with our immune system. Even petting our dogs helps with our immune system. So all those kinds of things are good. Just do it outside when we're around relatives that we're not too sure about their status in terms of being around others that might be positive, and distance when possible. If they have not had any risky contacts, and I think it's fine to gather inside and do things without much concern. Continue to connect with nature, escape with some hikes, paddling, whatever you enjoy doing. I think that's so important to stay healthy. And then if you do have family members coming back from college, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, I think if it's possible and you can have them tested, a few days before they head back, do that locally, and then you'll know you'll be safe. Good deal. One new thing I'm offering in the office is IV vitamin C. We've been doing that for some people that are undergoing therapy for cancer, and some people that want it for immune support. I think that for those of you that want a little more robust support, we can give you a huge dose, 25 grams. About the most somebody can handle orally in terms of vitamin C is maybe 8 to 10 grams without getting diarrhea. Somebody may have an open mic. If you can mute it, that'd be great. And anyhow, with the 25-gram dose once a month, I feel it could be protective, particularly in those individuals that may be a little bit more immune compromised. So we'll have it here. And Wendy, who is a nurse from Rose Hospital, she's amazing, will also offer it at home as an option. So we can set that up if you don't want to come into the office. But in our office, we'll have a private room with air filtration and to be very safe. And we're happy to do it here for you as well. We'll also have IV glutathione, Myers cocktail, and NAD available. NAD is a longer infusion and can help with energy and mitochondrial function. So when we do that, we could be looking at 3 to 4 hour infusion time to do it. So that's a little bit more of a time commitment. The vitamin C IV given in 500 cc's of saline only takes an hour roughly. I may be adding in basically what they call a fast IV push option, and I'll keep you posted on that. That's a different company that makes these fast IVs where we can do it in like 10 minutes, and I'll have to get some training on that before I offer. So more on that later. Another cool thing we have that's new is transdermal NAD. And NAD, by the way, is a type of B vitamin that helps with that Krebs cycle, the mitochondrial function. And this transdermal is a patch that has basically an electrode that allows it to flow it into your body through electrophoresis at a slow release manner. And that can be almost as good as intravenous NAD. So we have that already available for those people that have some low energy and fatigue and want to try it out. Promising emerging treatments that are coming down the pipe. The monoclonal antibodies are showing a lot of hope. Another word for some of them are nanobodies. The monoclonals are typically given IV. They're going to be crazy expensive, unfortunately. I think that, to get it approved by insurance is probably going to be one of those situations where you're on, knocking on death's door and then they approve it. And hopefully it's not too late at that time. But if the big pharma companies are not too greedy and it's more affordable, hopefully it can be given as an early intervention to prevent you from going into, the severe cytokine storm and acute respiratory distress syndrome. That would be the ideal state. Now, there is a company that one of our participants shared with me that's making a aerosolized version, and that will be a cheaper way to administer it than IV. And I think it may either be like a nasal spray or some kind of a powderized inhaler like Flovent comes in. So more on that, but unfortunately those treatments are still quite a ways off. We're probably looking at 2021 to get that available to mainstream. Again, prepare yourself for the fall bugs. We've got influenza. You know, I haven't seen any major activity in the U.S. yet, but that could change next week. Swine flu starting to emerge from China. Another little present from them. Getting the flu shot for starters, either in September or October, is great. I always tend to kind of wait until late September, October myself, because I don't want the shot to wear off by the latter part of the season. I had that happen to me once years ago. I got it really early, and then I ended up getting the flu in the spring despite getting the shot. So time it right. Once we see it starting to spike, I'll let everybody know. And you know, if it starts to spike in the next couple of weeks, and I'd say definitely September. But if we're not seeing anything till mid-September, late September, wait, you know, maybe till early October. Again, the lack of immunized population, particularly here in Colorado, and as we move into, you know, areas like Boulder, we're going to see even a lower immunization rate. They're going to make us more at risk for getting pertussis. If we have pertussis combined with COVID, it's pretty much game over. Same thing, measles, COVID, game over, flu, COVID, game over. I don't think any human could survive a combination of these guys. So put it on your gladiator suit by immunizing yourself and updating yourself, I think is one of those things to do. Even if you're afraid of them, I think the consequences are much worse than a sore arm for a few days. Pneumonia shots, of course, if you're at age over 65, if you have diabetes, you want to do it earlier, typically in your 50s if you have diabetes. And then, you know, other autoimmune conditions also warrant earlier immunizations with the flu, with the pneumonia vaccine. The COVID vaccine, when available and safe, I would definitely say thumbs up. I'll let you know when I think it's safe. I've mentioned in a previous Zoom meeting that I'm going to go ahead and do the Moderna vaccine if they're willing to give it to me. I've signed the consent. I'm on their list and just waiting to be called. So if I drop dead, you'll know it's a bad one. But if I survive, you know, some exposures, then hey, maybe it's a good one for you guys to consider too. All righty, so I'm gonna pop out of the PowerPoint and let you guys fire away at me. Hopefully I wasn't too boring or repetitive, and feel free to let me know your thoughts now. And y'all remember to unmute your mics as needed. No questions yet, that's good. This could be a short one.
Hey, this is Elwin.
Hey, Ellen.
Thank you for what you do and how well you do it. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm tempted to ask you what you think of Dr. Emanuel's exposition, but I won't put you on the, I'll withdraw that question. You know who she is, of course. She's the one talking about alien DNA.
Oh, right.
Sex with demons. And Trump recommended her highly, which tells you a lot.
Yeah, that was an embarrassing situation to the medical community. And it's unfortunate that ever got out and, you know, was shared out to so many people. Yeah, you know, just like every profession, you've got a few bad birds out there. And, you know, I was on social media calling that out. Many of us in the physician groups were calling that out. And yeah, it's just crazy to have those lunatic thoughts, unfortunately. So that's where I think, you know, we even have to call out fellow physicians that are off the charts crazy, or, you know, any walk of life, whether it's a PhD researcher or somebody that worked for, you know, pharmaceutical company like the gal that did the whole pandemic video on vaccines. There's a lot of misinformation, unfortunately. So, yeah, thanks for bringing her up, though.
There's a video clip this morning. Can't tell you which site, but a gentleman walked into a store, and someone started to shame him for not wearing a mask. He went totally overboard, started yelling, calling obscene names. A gentleman who was defending the use of masks started to approach him, and the guy who was causing the ruckus was lifted out and carried out by one of his sons out of the store.
Oh my God! You see, this is what our European friends and other international countries are looking at, and they're laughing at us. They're saying, "No way am I going to allow some crazy American like that into Paris." You know, he's going to try to go up the Eiffel Tower without a mask. Or he's going to walk into the Louvre without a mask. So, you know, I think a lot of it is not so much the rates of our cases of COVID, but just the insanity of Americans. It's sad. You know, so hopefully we'll get more normalcy, but in the meantime, yeah, we're going to see more and more of that.
Again, thank you for what you do.
Yeah, I think they should have sprayed them with Lysol.
Agreed.
You know, instead of mace, just have a big old can of Lysol and spray them out of the store.
I like it.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no further questions.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hey, this is Mark. How are you, Dr. Grover?
Hey, good, Mark. Hope you guys are well.
Yeah, appreciate you doing this. It's awesome. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the truth of hydroxychloroquine. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely. I
There's
think
mixed news in the media.
Right. So I remain open to the possibility that in combination with azithromycin, it may offer some benefit, but all the trials I've read so far are pretty much minimal to no benefit. So I personally would not take it because I don't think there's enough, bang for the buck or, reward versus risks there. You've got a risk of arrhythmias, torsades de points, and other things that can go down with it. But I do think more research is warranted and larger trials. So
I think they took it at 4x the rate, didn't they, when they had the arrhythmias?
Yeah, a little higher dose. Well, the one guy that died took some kind of a veterinarian dose, right? And that's what took him down. But you can have it at the typical doses too. It's rare, but people that have cardiac conditions, definitely a problem. I've had a few people that have asked me for hydroxychloroquine, and they were just adamant about it, and I was like, all right, here you go. But I've been fairly resistant to it for the most part, and really trying to educate them and even share the articles that show that it's not going to be helpful for
not a high enough reward.
Yeah. And I would say we really should save it for people that are in the hospital, and if the ICU pulmonologist decides to try it, through a trial, or the family wants to do it for somebody who's getting ready to go on the vent, yeah, go for it. I think that's cool. But I hate to see people like hoarding it and, buying 1,000
Sure.
tablets and then selling it on Amazon or whatever other craziness they're doing. But yeah, thanks for asking that question.
Dr. Grover?
Yeah.
Hey there.
Hey.
David's from Chicago. David, hi.
Hey, good to see you, David.
It's a wild town here now. A lot of looting and rioting.
Oh, it's scary, and the gun violence is through the roof there now. I'd be afraid to walk out on the streets. My God.
Yeah, I mean, I just went out the other day, and so many of the stores were looted. I don't know if you can see it, but
yeah, kind of. It's a little. Oh yeah. Whoa.
yeah, that's a Doc Martens store, and then
one of my favorite shoes. And they get the Keen store too.
Oh, man. Here's the Jimmy Choo store if you want good shoes, but it's pretty sad here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I got all the supplements, but to build up your immunity, the vitamin C, vitamin D, the mushrooms. What else was there?
Yeah, immunotonics is my other favorite. It's by Zymogen. We've got it here. You can order it through the web link on our website. If you can't get it, we can ship it to you, though, because they're having shortages of it. I've got quite a collection of it. And then the other one is called My Community, which is by Paul Stamets and Host Defense Company. Now, you could take a cocktail of vitamin D, vitamin C, My Community, and immunotonics, but I think you could basically just do vitamin D plus immunotonics as kind of your baseline. And then if you're feeling sick, add in the other goodies to kind of boost it. And you can also double your dose of immunotonics. And that's what I have been doing when I feel like I've got a cold or, you know, some kind of upper respiratory thing coming on. So I think that's a good strategy. Other things, you know, cordyceps, which is within the My Community, is a good one. There's a few other reishi, etc., that can be helpful. But as mentioned, those vitamin C, D, immunotonics will do the trick for you. And I do have a list of those on the revolutionarymd.com website if you just need to look at them specifically.
What about if someone has that cytokine storm? What are they doing to treat that? The bad phase of the coronavirus.
Well, so there's a lot of trials going on now with budesonide inhaled and some of the other orally inhaled steroids. And actually, they've got a little bit of inhaled steroids here in the office with a nebulizer. So if a patient has that, I could send them home with a neb combined with the steroid to do some home treatments to hopefully keep them out of the hospital. So that's one of the things that will fight the cytokine storm. From a natural standpoint, I think the vitamin C, because of its antioxidant qualities, N-acetylcysteine and glutathione are big ones, and I've got that on the list as well. The Institute of Functional Medicine has talked quite a bit about reducing the risk of cytokine storm by maintaining antioxidants in our diet, which is one of the reasons I made that point, you know, on the Staying Healthy slide that said, you know, be sure to maintain a anti-inflammatory Mediterranean diet with lots of veggies, because that'll cool off the baseline state of your body to where it's less likely to go from a small spark into a bonfire. So if we're already aflame with a lot of inflammation related to a crappy diet and we get COVID, then we're definitely more likely to go into cytokine storm. But yeah, great question.
So, Fred, I have got a question. It's Andy here.
Oh, hey guys, how are you?
And Jonathan is here too. And Fred, thank you first and foremost, because we find these are so helpful, your Zoom informations. But I have got, actually, it's a very curious question.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is social distancing, thankfully, but they're not wearing a mask, which is okay if we're, you know, far enough apart. What does a yawn do? Does it do anything if someone doesn't cover their mouth if they're yawning? I wasn't sure.
Oh, I don't know either. I think you got a little bit of an exhalation going there. I guess the biggest concern would be the mask falling off while we yawn and exhaling potentially. But yeah, I think it'd be pretty low risk.
Yeah, if they weren't wearing a mask at all and just yawned.
Yeah.
Without covering their face. Without
covering their mask, I think it's still pretty low risk as long as you've got minimum of 3 feet and, you know, preferably 6 feet away. I think you're okay.
It was just a curious question.
That's good.
Hey, real quick, hi Fred, it's Jonathan here. Real quick question.
Yeah.
Any new data on the time that the virus stays on paper, wood, anything like that, or is it pretty much what it's been? Because, you know,
we're still kind of wiping down stuff and wondering if we need to continue to do that.
Yeah, I think the main concern is like stainless steel and more hard surfaces for the duration of survival. I don't think the paper is quite as much of a deal as it used to be, but it's still not a bad idea to you know, wipe things down at least on a reasonable level. You don't have to get crazy with it. And then if you've got the ultraviolet light opportunity to put things under a light for a few minutes if they're fresh from the store and coming across the belt, and grocery handlers, etc.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, nothing new that I've seen on that otherwise, though. Yeah, thanks.
What about when I go on an elevator here or walk across people on a path that don't have their mask on? I have my mask on, but I just hold my breath.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've run into that hiking quite a bit too, and I have done that where I've held my breath, particularly if it's like a bicycler going up a hiking trail on a mountain bike and they're just huffing and puffing. You know, I try to get out of the way and then I hold my breath and I walk, 5 to 10 feet down. I think that's the best we can do, because they say if it's just us with a mask and the other person doesn't, there's only a 30% protection. With 2 masks on, both of us 3 feet away, it's 60%. If we're 6 feet away with 2 masks on, it's probably 90% protection. So
I figure if I don't breathe that in and walk past it, hold my breath for 10, 15 seconds, and kind of breathe out a little bit, just exhale slightly.
yeah, I think you're
I
good.
don't know if they say that works or doesn't work. Or
Yeah, I haven't seen anything on it, but I think, yeah, hold your breath a little bit if you can, and distance yourself, and hopefully there's a little breeze out there. We've gone out to eat a few times, and I've been very strategic about where I sit in terms of sitting on the periphery and upwind so that I'm not getting downwind breaths from other people, even if they're 6 to 10 feet away. And when I call for a reservation, I'll say, yeah, I want the upwind peripheral table, please. What's that about? So usually they've been able to accommodate. All right. Couple more questions. Are we good? I think we're good. So I think I'll do this again, middle of next month. Hopefully numbers will look better. Hopefully we'll have more progress on the vaccine and monoclonal antibodies, everything else that's coming down the pipe. I think our main thing is just to maintain our discipline and maintain our mental fortitude and balance the best that we can as we struggle through these challenging times. And hopefully we'll get through this, as mentioned, by early next summer to where we can breathe a sigh of relief and be able to move on without another pandemic for another 100 years or longer, till when we're all out of here, right? Well, thanks again for joining me, and feel free to email me any questions. Again, I'll put this on the website with a link to the YouTube recorded video. Feel free to share that out. I'll put it on the Revolutionary MD Facebook page too, and looking forward to the next one. Namaste. Take care.